All right, everybody, this is Jay Papasan. Welcome to the One Thing webinar for February 2016. Super excited to chat with Grant Cardone today about his 10X rule. This guy's written 5 best-selling books. He has got a real estate empire. He has built all kinds of wealth and changed all kinds of lives. So I think we're really going to get a lot of rich stuff today, and it's based on real experience. This is not an intellectual talking about success. This is someone who's really smart, who's done it. So I'm very excited after reading his book now twice to really dive into it and pick it apart. Just a quick reminder, on the screen you can see my Twitter tag. You got Grant's, you got our books. If you want to share stuff and your ahas during this, go ahead and blast it out on Twitter. If we miss something, you can reach out to us there as well, and we'll circle back after the webinar and answer any questions. I'm Jay Papasan, co-author of The One Thing. A lot of folks who log in here, we've discovered about a third of them aren't familiar with the book. So I'm going to take like 3 or 4 minutes, cover the high notes so that if I start talking about lining up your dominoes, you'll know where I'm coming from. And I'll also then give you the full background on Grant, and then bring him on for a short Q&A with me, and then we'll open it up to questions. So definitely check out your questions toolbar. If you have a question for Grant, please type it in there. My team is going to be flagging those so that I can see the ones that would best suit the entire audience, and we're going to hit as many of those as we can before we finish today. So without further ado, I'm going to dive in here, and I'm going to tell you just really quickly what's the big idea behind the one thing so that we can talk about the one thing to 10x everything, which is Grant's message. So right in the heart of our book is called Perrito's Principle. I'm sure you've heard of it. If you've been around much business or success training, we hear about Vilfredo Perrito, the Italian economist, who first observed that 80% of the wealth in Italy was held by 20% of the people. It took, a couple of hundred years later for Joseph Duran, a quality control guy, to read about this and kind of have the aha, you know what, this is not just about wealth. This is not economics. This is a principle that applies to everything, and it's since been widely popularized. The big idea in the one thing is to take this and put it on steroids. If you get the majority of your results from the minority of what you do, 80% comes from the 20%, we want you to ask, what's my 20%, and then keep asking it until you get to one thing. That's our point. Do you know what's the one thing that will contribute the absolute most to your success in any area of your life? The payoff for this is what we call the domino effect. This is our acknowledgement, because the first complaint everybody says about the one thing is, look, man, it's never just one thing, and we know that. We have to do a lot of stuff in our life, but there's ways to go about it. So if you've ever lined up dominoes so that by knocking over one, you have a whole bunch of them fall over, this is what we're talking about, lining up your dominoes. Would it surprise you to know that the world record was set in the Netherlands, and they lined up almost 4.5 million dominoes, and by knocking over one, they got the rest to fall over. So what this tells us is that one thing, if you do it properly, can make a lot of stuff happen. And what's even cooler is if you look at the illustration right now, there's a guy named Loren Whitehead that wrote this obscure journal article in the American Journal of Physics back in the 80s. But he discovered that a 2-inch domino can knock over a 3-inch domino, and a 3-inch domino will knock over a 4.5-inch domino. Basically, a domino can knock over one that's 50% larger. So it becomes geometric in terms of its growth. He built them out of wood, and he described it. By the 8th one, it was as big as a door that was falling over. What began with a gentle tick ended with a large slam. Well, when we read about that, we loved it, because this is one of the central metaphors in our book. And we wanted to see how would that play out if you really focused on your one thing, gave it everything over the course of a longer period of time. So if you see this graph on your screen now, a lot of scientists would call this the hockey stick graph, because it kind of looks like a hockey stick on its side. You can see that what begins really small, right, a 2-inch domino, will grow over time till it becomes so big you can barely get your mind around it. By the 18th domino, if it started with 2 inches and grew at that same rate, it would knock over a domino almost as tall as the Tower of Pisa. By the 23rd, it would knock over one taller than the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower, by the way, is over 1,000 feet tall. This is like the Empire State Building. You know, we see the little statues and the Eiffel earrings. We forget how big that structure is. By the 31st domino, it would knock over a domino 3,000 feet above Everest, and by the 57th, it would knock over a domino. If you could build it, it would reach all the way from the Earth to the moon. We would posit that this is the shape of huge, extraordinary success. In our 5 years of research, we found that the people who gave the most focused attention to their one thing over time would experience this kind of curve of success. And it's what we want for you, and it's one of the reasons we have this series. One of the last kind of central beliefs here is that when you discover your one thing for your business, your life, we want you to make it a habit. And we ask the question in our book, well, how long does that take? What does that commitment look like? And everyone says it takes 31 days, right? But we couldn't find any scientific evidence to support it. But we did find some Australian researchers, and they had asked a large body of people to take on a health habit. And then they just tracked them for a year and asked, did you do it? Yes or no? And how hard was it? And their research showed that on average, the habit forms around day 66. Now realize there's a couple big ahas that you should have from this, right? One, if I work for something for a period of time, on average about 66 days, it's going to become habitual. So I work for the thing that then works for me. Two, this is about more than twice as long as most people think for a habit to form. So you need to stick with it, stay focused on your one thing if you want that thing to kick into overdrive and work on your behalf. That's kind of the big idea behind the one thing. Can you identify it? And then can you make it virtually automatic in your life so that every day you're building up that line of dominoes and extraordinary success is coming your way? So with that as kind of a preface for our conversation, let's talk about 10xing your thinking, your business, and your life. Let me give you a little bit about Grant before I invite him on the phone here. Grant's a New York Times bestselling author of 5 books. He's an international speaker on motivation, leadership, real estate, entrepreneurship, and finance. He operates 5 private companies with a combined annual sales, get this, of over $100 million. His real estate company controls over 3,500 units in the United States. In his investing career, and I'm a real estate investor, I've written real estate books. These are big numbers, folks. He's owned more than 6,100 multifamily units, and his total real estate holdings are currently over 3,500 apartment units worth $350 million. It's no surprise that he's the CEO of the #1 sales training company out there. He works with Fortune 5 companies all over the world. He's a social media expert. He's one of the top streamers in the world. With his Grant Cardone TV, it's the fastest growing digital network out there. He contributes to Entrepreneur, Huffington Post, Medium, LinkedIn, all the major media outlets. And what I think is super cool is that he is also currently working with the Pentagon to create a course for 1 million troops transitioning to civilian life. Big hats off to you, Grant, for focusing on those people who give so much for us. And finally, one of the big things that really attracted me when I was reading this book is, as powerful as Grant is about focusing on huge success in his work, he is uncompromising in his belief that it can happen at home too. He has got a wife of 12 years and 2 children, 4 and 6, and it's clear if you pay attention that this is a big part of his life and it's not neglected. So without further ado, Grant, are you there? Will you unmute yourself and join the call?
Jay, what's going on, brother, man?
You know, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. You sound like you could be like a blues singer, man. I love your voice. Welcome aboard. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, and congratulations to everybody that is here and taking the time and energy and the effort, particularly the time, to educate yourself and get connected with power.
Man, that's cool. You know, I got the idea to invite you onto this broadcast. I kept seeing people post pictures of, literally there was one today, my 2 favorite business books, The One Thing and The 10X Rule. And I was chatting with my colleague, Jeff, and I said, you know what the connection here is? If our book is about figuring out your one thing, Grant's book is about how much commitment do we need to give it to have the success we want. And I can see how people would pair those two as a really magical combination. So I'm really super excited. I think a lot of the folks on this know who you are and they've read your book, but if they haven't, I hope they're going to make a commitment to read it because they're absolutely awesome compliments for each other.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Jay.
Well, cool, man. I just want to dive in. You know, one of the big takeaways, and it's one of the reasons I have these 3 talking points up here. When I was reading your book, we constantly believe this. Before you can do anything, you have to think something. So you have to 10x your thinking before you can even attack your business and your life. So just really quickly, for the folks here who haven't read the 10x rule, can you give us a quick description of what is the 10x rule and where did it come from?
Well, the 10x rule, I write books for myself. I actually don't write books for people to read. I write them for me to figure out where I need to go next. And when I wrote the 10x rule, it was about 2.5, 3 years ago, and I was trying to figure out how to 10x my business because I was no longer the incremental growth. While I've needed that in my life, it's not what I was interested in anymore. You know, I remember making $2,000 a month, thinking I just need to get to $2,200 a month. I need to get to $2,400 a month. And I did that. I did the increments. I look back now and wonder if that wasn't a mistake. Now I'm interested in exponential growth. Like I want multipliers today. I want. At the time I wrote the book, I guess I was 53 years old and 54 years old maybe, and I'm like, okay, I'm running out of time. I got to get monster growth here in short periods of time. So I was interested, is there a way to multiply rather than add?
I love that, man. That is really cool. And I love that, like, you looked up, you felt maybe an increased urgency. And so if anybody's listening to this call and they're not happen to be in their 20s, you started this journey in your 50s. And if I can't recall the stats in the book, but like in like the last 10 years, you've earned like 6 times the income that you earned in all the years previous. Like once you ask the bigger question, how can I get multiples? I mean, things really took off for you, right?
Yeah. It was like, okay, why am I? Look, it's all work. Okay, failing's work. You know, I remember I was broke. I've been in a position where half of my life I was broke. A third of my life I was just getting by. Maybe more than a third, actually, maybe 40%. And the last 10% of my life, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done just getting by. I'm done being broke anymore. By the way, just getting by is just like being broke. I want to figure out now, how do I have prosperity in every area of my life? Time's more valuable than money. It's the first thing I think about, time. How do I multiply time? How do I have more time with my kids? How do I have more quality time with my wife? And, oh, by the way, how do I actually get my business to grow so enormously and give me so much power that there's money and customers and opportunities everywhere, rather than that small kind of think, you know, like your parents tell you, like, be patient, you know, it takes time. What's the old saying about patience? Patience is a virtue. Look, patience has never been a virtue to me. It's always been a liability. And, you know, while I'm being patient, somebody else is freaking scrambling, hustling, pushing and shoving and going fast and thinking much bigger than me. And that's why you see guys becoming unicorns in their 30s today. Because the game's different. The game's different today. Speed is possible. We are interconnected in ways that we never were before. You know, this isn't 2,000 years ago where it took years to build a hut. You know, if you have the resources today and you don't have people putting too much regulation in your way, and you got a bunch of people around you saying, let's build it now, these startups don't need to take forever. And by the way, if they do take forever, you're probably not. You're gonna have a fail up, not a startup.
Yeah, and I mean the rate at which things can scale today is truly off the charts compared to, you think about, you know, Walmart. I mean, you talk about a dominant company, and I think they describe that as ink blotting. You know, it just spread organically, like through supply chains and warehouses. That's all virtual now. I mean, people can explode their business super fast.
Yeah.
Can I dive into one thing you said about time and how can I multiply it? Because I remember in the book you're writing about, you know, everybody kind of gets the same amount of time, but how can I just get more done in that time? If you're going to make 10 calls, I'm going to make 20, because that's just like I got 4 hours for year one in the same amount of time. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that resource time is the thing that people who really succeed, they don't manage it, as you would agree there, but they do more with it than the rest of the people out there.
Yeah, look, the whole time management thing is to me, that's a garbage dump. Like, I don't want to manage time, okay? I don't know any managers that are getting rich, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know a manager that's super freaking rich that you're like, oh, I want to be a manager. I don't want to be a manager. I don't want to manage another activity. The last thing I want to do is manage things that have been made up. I don't want to manage money, and I don't want to manage time. Time and money have both been created by man. You know, the fact that we use a 24-hour clock, that was all made up. You know, the sun comes up, the sun goes down. Some of you are nocturnal. Some of you work day. Some of you probably better off working at night. I have 24 hours, or whatever that 24 is, whatever the number is, the 1, the 0, the 2, the 4. They're all made up. All this stuff is made up. And so what I want to do is I want to collapse. I want to basically compress things and get more done in shorter periods of time. So time is measured by movement.
Yep.
You know, we wouldn't know anything about time if there was not some movement of the car, the bird, the sun, things moving across space, right? So I'm like, how can I move things across space and ensure there's more particles in that space? Then I will therefore get more done in the same amount of time.
You remind me of a good friend of mine, Ben, and he walked in at the end of the year and he said, I want to tell you my latest hack. And basically it's getting his books on Audible and listening to them on 3x, right? He's like,
right.
He can get he can read books 3 times as fast as everybody else because he's literally speeding up the processing time.
Yeah. And today, by using, you know, today there's so many pieces of technology that can push out ideas and concepts and communication. Look, your value in the marketplace is going to be determined by how many people you can communicate with. You know, the value of any idea, whether it's a real estate idea, whether you're trying to sell real estate, buy real estate, get a girl, get a guy, sell a product, the ability to communicate to mass numbers of people effectively is going to determine how valuable your product, your service, or your idea is.
Is that why you write in the book? You write in the book about being omnipresent. I mean, you take that again to a huge extreme. Like you're going to be communicating everywhere through everything.
Well, yeah, and that's what opened me up to the. You see, I had been trapped by this idea that I would market an idea to a vertical. And when I wrote the 10X rule, I basically discovered, hey, if I was going to go to 10 times more people today, I can't do it in one vertical. Nor can I communicate just on the lines that are comfortable to me, meaning maybe email. Okay, maybe you're comfortable with email or personal visits. You have to use every line possible, and also the old idea that you want to only target market. You know, when I was writing the book, I was like, oh my God, I need to get to more people, which means I need to get outside my market, outside my vertical, outside my county, my zip code. Which means I need a lot more money, a lot more time, and a lot more resources.
There you go, man. That's great. I mean, it's funny. I was like, when the moment you said time, I just like one of those little moments. My wife and I were teaching a class a week ago Sunday on how to have a big life and have a big life too. And I looked up and she had a quote from you on the screen about how wealthy people buy time while poor people spend it. And I was like, isn't that a sign about what's coming down the pipe?
Totally. You know, Jay, and since I wrote the book, and I mean that book is literally in the last 6 years, I've in the last 4 years for sure, I've made more money than I made in my entire career. And it was because I changed my operating basis from a small thing to a monster thing. Also, the quality of my life has gotten better, spiritually, physically. Relationships are better, friends are better, everything. One of the things I did in this was I just bought a plane a year ago. I bought a Gulfstream, and it's not a little purchase. And you know, when I talked to a couple of accountants, they said, look, it doesn't make sense. There's nothing about it that makes sense. It's ridiculous. You don't want to do it. You know, definitely do a NetJets thing if you're going to do it. Try it out for a while. But I walked away from it. I was like, yeah, you know, they're right, but they don't understand the value of time. And if time is money, if quality of life, and that's what I hear everybody say, I want more time, then you would exchange money for time. And that machine is basically a time machine. I invested money, I spent something that goes down in value to buy something else that goes down in value to increase the amount of time I have with those things I deem valuable.
Well, that sounds like a conscious investment. And it reminds me, I don't know if you've heard the story about Warren Buffett buying his plane. He,
Yeah,
everybody, I mean, he ended up naming the plane, quote, the indefensible from a financial standpoint, but his
yeah.
organization argued the value of your time. If you're flying coach or first class, you're making him, he's worth millions of dollars an hour. You know, it will pay
Yeah,
for itself in 1 year if we think of the value of your time.
yeah. And then Warren's like, hey, if one plane's a good idea, let me buy the whole freaking airlines.
There's big thinking for you right there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to come back to this idea, you have to 10x your thinking. What do you think keeps people from 10xing their thinking to start down this path?
Well, I think that that's a pretty simple answer to that question. I mean, it's parents, it's schools. We've been dumbed down. I mean, we've been so dumbed down. Like, you got to take a class. It takes this long to take the class. You got to go to, how do you know I didn't finish the class in the first week? I mean, everything is like the middle class. The middle class is the problem here, okay? The middle class in America, the desired middle class that we have defended in this country for 50 years, that other countries want to emulate. Just look at the word the middle. The middle is based on an average or a median. Average is the new broke, folks. So, 50 years ago, the middle class was moving up in the world. Today, the middle class is a threat that you're guaranteed almost to move downward. And you can't keep this middle thing in place. So the middle class is based on an idea of being comfortable,
Yep.
settle down, get a good job, put your money in somebody else's hand called a 401k, save for your whole life, and then one day, if you're lucky, you'll be rich. But the problem is you're going to be old too. You're going to be old. You can't get in anymore. You can't go all night without taking a leak. You're an old man or an old woman, and now you got a little bit of money. Well, that's not financial freedom. The thought, the thinking, the ideas that our parents gave us are just broken today. They don't work in a world that is connected and extremely fast.
Well, the good news is the people who logged on to this call, they're seeking extraordinary in their lives. And I think, and hopefully they all get it and will teach their kids to think this way, that the way to seek success is to aim higher, right? If you aim towards the middle, I mean, you almost always fall short of whatever you aim at. You go ahead and aim and shoot for the moon and see where you're going to end up. I was gonna ask, one of my favorite chapters in your book, because I associate not this, also, we're all trained, right, to follow the system to be average. I totally agree with that. But I also think there's fear. People who dare to step out, I think sometimes they ask the big question, well, what would it look like for me to own my own plane? What would it look like for me to own my own business, to step out of that comfort zone? I thought your take on fear was absolutely phenomenal. And if you'll allow me, I'm going to share this just with folks. I actually underlined this. Fear is actually a sign that you are doing what's needed to move in the right direction. Time is what drives fear. The more time you devote to the object of your apprehension, the stronger it becomes. To starve the fear of its favorite food starve the fear of its favorite food by removing time from the menu. And basically, you sum it up. Fear just doesn't tell you what you need to be doing, that thing that makes you uncomfortable, but when to do it, which is kind of right now. I read that out loud to my wife and kids, and I was like, that's it. People, when they even make the decision, they hit that button, and they don't realize that fear is actually an indicator that you're doing the right thing. When did you learn that lesson, Grant? I mean, that's huge.
Well, I just know that, I experience fear all the time. I was doing a meeting for Google, and one of the guys came up to me in the audience at the end and said, how are you so confident? And I'm like, well, number one, you don't know that I am. You're observing confidence. You think I'm confident based on some other comparison of something, maybe probably yourself, but you don't know what I really feel inside. So I'm always experiencing fear. The old you walk up to a guy and say, hey, you scared? Are you scared of anything? Oh no, I'm scared of nothing. Well, you should be. Everybody should be scared. You should be reaching up all the time to do something that scares you. The trick with fear is you want to do it so fast. See, fear fear loves time. The more time you add to anything, the more scared you're going to become. So if I'm scared, I take the hardest thing every day and do it first. I take the thing I'm most scared of every day and do it first. And I start building confidence by overcoming the idea that I should wait. See, I don't want fear to beat me down and convince me to put it off. So that ad about just do it, you know, I think they could have had just do it now.
Yeah.
Quick.
My wife said, when I read her that passage, she said, it's like the high dive. Standing up there doesn't make it any easier. You just need to run to the end and jump off.
Totally, because once you jump, man, I have this saying, hey, commit first, figure the rest out later. That's how I got in real estate, literally, Jay. I have I don't know, we got $350 million worth of real estate that goes up in value every day, and the debt gets paid down every day by other people. And I committed to real estate, not knowing, I've never read a book on real estate. I just knew in my heart of heart it was the right thing to do. And, you know, the best thing that have ever happened to me in my life, I committed first, I figured the rest out later.
Yeah, I think it's the Zig Ziglar line, you know, if you wait for all the lights to turn green, you'll never get out of your driveway. So
yeah, you run out of fuel.
Yeah, exactly. You just run out of gas in the driveway.
Exactly.
Well, cool. There's a quote. I was flipping through my book, obviously, before I got on the call and last night, and actually it's something that shows up in your book. I underlined a passage twice, so I think this is probably something you say. Nothing happened to me. It happens because of me.
Yes.
And we call that being accountable in our book versus being a victim. And
yeah.
I think on this journey to 10Xing, that's just huge. Can you expound on that a little bit? Like when you say that to people, what are you teaching them?
Yeah, look, I was a victim for the first half of my life. You know, I've been a victim. I was a victim to drugs. I was a victim to the middle class. I was a victim to an education process that was 17 years long. I mean, why does anybody got to go to school for 17 years? Jay, explain that to me.
You're asking the wrong guy, man. My kids are in an alternative school, and my wife and I even said, do we think our kids are going to go to college? And I'm like, if they're not going into the STEM stuff, I'm not sure. You know, I get you.
So I was a victim to that. I was a victim to high school, to being popular. You know, I don't want to be popular. I don't want to be popular. Popular's not on my list, man. I want people to know me. You can't, if you're going to get people to know, so you see, I was a victim to this stuff, right? I was a victim, but what I need to understand, and what everybody should understand, is you're a victim means you're participating. You cannot be a victim without participating. And I would say this is the case 100% of the time. To every bad thing that happens to every bad person on this planet, I know I'm going to get some heat for this.
You're not afraid of the heat, though.
But I know that personally, I have every bad thing that has happened to me in my life, I had something to do with it. And even if I'm wrong on that count, at least if I take that position, I am now back in control.
Yes.
Because if things are just happening to me, dude, there's nothing you can do about that. So I, you know, there's nothing, and I want to be able to do something about it, right? I want to be, even if I have to trick myself, right? The 10X rule really is me tricking myself. Okay, I'm worth $1 million. I want to be worth 10 million. I'm tricking myself, but you know what? The poor person's tricking themselves too. A guy wrote me from India yesterday and says, look, I make $2 a day. How do I do this? Leave, dude. Get the freak out of India. You know, Bill Gates said, you know, if you're born poor, that's not your fault. If you stay poor, it is your fault.
Yeah.
There was nothing, and Bill Gates is a nice guy. There was nothing in there about where you lived. If you don't like where you live, if you don't like the town you're in, 70% of the people still live in Detroit. Why? Why do you still live in Detroit, man? The city's been freaking dying for 30 years. Leave. 60% of Americans live within 10 miles of where they were born. Why? Just because you were born there. If you were born in some other place, you'd be there. So go where you need to go. Go where you can expand. Have the friends you need to have. Have a list of 10 new friends that have 10X thinking. You know, surround yourself with people that make freaking stupid amounts of money, and stay in great hotels and take time off so you can become become that, because you're basically your surroundings now anyway, and I know you agree with that.
Yes, absolutely. And I was going to add to those stats I just read today, 80% of people are unhappy on their jobs. So a lot of times we're choosing to stay where we're not going to find success. We just need to own that we have the ability to move. And that's just a big deal. Take ownership of our life.
Yeah, that 80% number that are unhappy with their jobs, you know, you go work for yourself. If you hate your boss now, go work for yourself, and I guarantee you're going to hate that boss too.
You might discover,
Yeah, exactly. You're unhappy. The last job I had, I was unhappy at. And rather than quit that job, I decided I was going to get great at that job. And when I got great at it, I got great at a job I hated, which was sales. I hated sales. Now everybody now knows me as a sales guru. I'm probably the leading authority in the world on sales today. That 25 years ago, I hated sales. And I just made a decision. Look, I'm going to learn to be great at this, and then I'm going to quit it.
Love it. What you said there is you made a decision to do something, right? You took ownership of that thing and you made it happen. That is awesome. Hey, I'm gonna hit pause real quick, Grant, because I want to remind everybody we got close to 1,000 people here. I want you to use the questions toolbar, because in just a few minutes I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to start asking your questions to Grant so that we can get your specific questions out there. And I've already got some great questions out there from Chris, Michael, Jay, and we're going to get to all of those. So make sure that you use the questions toolbar, and my team will start flagging those for me so I can ask the best questions. So I'm sorry to interrupt there, Grant, but I know that we're going to be transitioning. I just wanted to make sure that people paused for a second and got their questions into the questions toolbar.
You got it, man. I don't even know what I was about. Oh, I think the thing was I said I made a decision to get great at it.
Yeah.
Because, look, there's no payoff in anything short of great. Anything less than great, you don't feel good about, and it won't pay you. So if you're taking notes today, understand this. If you go for anything short of great at your job, your relationship, your money, whatever it is, dude, look, it's not going to feel good, and you're never going to make any money at it. It's impossible. The only people that are overpaid on this planet, by the way, people are either underpaid or overpaid. There's no fair pay anyway. Nobody ever gets paid fairly. You're either underpaid, and then a handful of people on this planet, a small percentage, are overpaid. And that's really up to you. You know, you're never going to be fairly paid. Get great at what you do, then you'll be overpaid.
You know, it's like when I'm translating this the way we talk, you're just willing to ask bigger questions so that you get bigger answers for your life. You know, why should I choose to be good at something when I could ask the question, what would it take for me to be great at this? It's just a simple change in how you ask the question that translates to a different attack and a different approach. I want to ask you just a couple of questions that when I'm reading your book, when you talk about the massive levels of action and activity you throw at your goals, how do you distinguish and how do you keep, in terms of the people who work for you, distinguish between activity and productivity? Right, I've had days where I come home and I'm literally sweated through my dress shirt, right? There was a lot going on, but I'm not sure I did the right things, right? How do you make sure that you're being productive with that level of action?
Well, if you know that's a great question, by the way. Jay, you're a freaking awesome dude. I got to tell you. You know, the definition of work, I think the 4th or 5th definition of work in the Merriam Dictionary says you actually accomplish the results of the activity you were attempting. And then I was like, oh, man, work is the completion of the desired outcome of that activity, right?
Yeah.
If I'm working a client and I don't close him, well, that might not be considered work. So what I do every day, I go to work every day to accomplish something. And you know, look, I'm just relentless, man. I bang so hard to get a deal done, to finish something. The woman I'm married to, I called 26 months for 26 times over 13 months. I have clients that I've been calling one guy for 17 years now, still haven't closed the deal. See, I don't consider that work because I haven't accomplished it yet.
I love that. I love that persistence and that attitude about being, I mean, it's a practical approach. I've got to do what works, and what works is work.
Yeah, so if you're at work all day and didn't get anything done, maybe you shouldn't have gone home yet.
It's funny when we were, this is like, didn't make it into the book, but we were studying time, right, and how arbitrary it is. There's two kinds
Yes.
of time. There's clock time. It's 5 o'clock, time to go home, and event time. And I grew up with a country my family came from Mississippi, and Gary had, farmers in his family, and we know what event time looks like. If it's time to milk the cows, you milk the cows until the last cow is milked. That's event time. And I think not enough people see the work their way, that they have a job to do, and their work is done when the work is done.
Exactly, man. And then so that's why people have to have monster targets and monster goals, because I think most people give up on the work they're doing because the goals are so small, the payoff is so small, the feeling and the possibilities are so small. Why would anybody want to sweat it?
Right. It's not attractive enough. There's no pull in that goal.
Dude, there's no freedom. You guys know, everybody, if you live in America, you know that if you're making 52 grand a year, you cannot live on that. In no city in America, I don't care, pick a city, Sioux City, Iowa, it costs 51 grand to live in Sioux City, Iowa. If you make 52,000, you got $1,000 left over. You haven't paid any taxes. Assume that there is no taxes, you still can't live. So there's no freedom, there's no out, and that's why people start giving up. They're giving up. If you've given up, it is for one reason, because your goals have never been big enough in order for you to have a payoff, a life orgasm. Like you've never had a payoff big enough, giant enough to say, oh my God, man, I'd be willing to risk myself to do this. And I think that that's the problem in this country today, is that, nobody's dreaming big enough like we used to.
So is the solution, so just in case there's people on this call, they're like, holy cow, he just described me. What's the first step to turning it around?
The first step is you just gotta get honest with yourself and just say, okay, the thinking that I've been using has not worked.
Mm-hmm.
This is what got you here. This is your mom and your dad and your grandparents. They all influence you to think like this. The schools you went to. They all influence you to think like this. This is really not your fault, by the way. The newspapers, the media, the politicians are the worst. They keep they keep this middle class thing there every night, talking about how they're going to save the middle class. Folks, the middle class is a freaking scam of mass proportions. It is so big a scam, it's unbelievable. So understand, first of all, the thinking that you have got you here. Then decide, okay, well, where do I want to be? If you're going to surrender, go get you a surrender t-shirt. Quit bitching and just say, I quit. I'm just going to settle. Or say, you know what, these other guys, the Grant Cardones, the Jays, these guys have done it, man. I can do it too. I'm no smarter than anybody else. And it's out there. There is so much out there. There's so many possibilities. Anybody can become a guru today. Anybody can get rich today. Anybody can become an expert today. Anybody can become famous today. But you got to commit, and you got to understand. This is what I do. I got two choices. I'm either going to freaking just get by, or I'm going to be wildly successful. And just getting by takes more work than being wildly successful. And I believe that because I've done both. And it is easier to be financially successful. It's easier to be happier than it is to be unhappier, and it's easier to be rich than it is to be broke.
There you go, folks. We got to elevate our thinking to just kind of set aside, just acknowledge, all right, the thinking that got me here wasn't big enough. It's time to think bigger. That was awesome. Thank you for that. I mean, kind of inspiring. I feel like I'm watching a YouTube video of an inspiring coach at halftime, right? That's rallying the troops to rebound. I'm going to turn, if it's okay with you, Grant, we got about 20 minutes left. I want to get to some of our listeners' actual questions. Are you cool with that?
Questions. Let's roll.
All right. So Chris led us off. He said, what's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning and the last thing you do before you go to sleep? And this is like the great question of entrepreneurs. What are your evening and morning rituals?
Yeah, first thing I do in the morning when I wake up is I get out of bed.
I guess you would then say, what's the first significant thing you do in the morning?
The second thing I do is I take a leak. And then what I try to do every day is I try to write my goals down every morning. Okay, I have this little planner. I try to write my goals down every day. I'm talking about long-term goals, unachievable stuff. It's not a to-do list, right? It's not what I got to do today. It's not the battle plan. It's the big picture, like 50 years from now, 100 years from now. What am I going to be known for?
Right.
What do I got to, So and then before I go to sleep at night, guess what I do? I write my goals down again.
Love it. You're just the focus on the big vision for your life. You start and end your days with, I've got to always remember the point of all this is I've got this massive, huge vision for my life.
Yeah, exactly. And I told my wife when I finally got her to go out with me, I said, look, I'll give anything up in my life for you and for our family except one thing, my dreams and my goals. And I said, I need you to support me in my dreams and my goals, because if the truth is, if I give up on those, I'll give up on anything. And I see so many people giving up on their dreams after they get married, and then they have kids, and they put them further back on the shelf. And I would just encourage everybody, the dreams I'm achieving today make my wife's dreams possible.
There you go. You've found a way to align them. All right, I got a question from Fred from Arizona, currently in Denver. What's the best book that you've read in the last 12 months? Or if that doesn't come to mind, what are you currently reading?
Well, man, I've read so many books. In the last 12 months, I was actually writing a book, so I don't read books while I write because I don't want to be influenced.
Yeah, I know that trick.
But, oh, man, there's so many great books I've read. I mean, I don't even know how to answer that. The best book I've ever read on the mind was Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard. Very controversial, but I read that book probably 7 times.
Is that the book that you tend to give away the most?
No, I mean, it's just a book that really helped me think. It lifted the top off of my thinking. That book literally changed my life. Okay, so you guys can read whatever you want about Scientology and Hubbard and all that and get all freaked out about it, but the book like launched my life. So the other books like Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman in the World, Think and Grow Rich, these classic books that have been around forever, like just that's what gave me the impetus to write books. I'm like, I want to be one of those guys that people talk about 50 or 100 years after I'm dead. So every book that I've ever read, Jay, I've gotten something out of. Every book. I've never read a bad book.
That's cool. No, those are some classic titles. If somebody was looking for something to add to their reading list, I heard several. If you haven't read them, I've read all of those too. They're awesome. And if you're reading with a purpose, you're going to be writing down how you can take that knowledge and then apply it. And that's the key to reading, right?
Yeah, totally. And I'm not looking for the whole book to be good. I need one line, one sentence out of a book could change my life.
I'm with you. I've got books out there, and I'll say, here's the one thing you need to know about this book, and I'll hand it to someone. Now go read it. Here's a question from Michael. Can you give a couple of examples of the one thing, right, from a successful entrepreneur? Like, for a successful entrepreneur, what would be the one thing to really get things started?
One thing to get started, dude, get started. I mean, call on somebody. At the end of the day,
take action.
Call somebody. Call somebody and sell them your idea. If you can't sell them your idea, you hadn't figured it out yet. This is the thing people don't want to do is they don't want to call on anybody. Everybody wants to be the founder, the manager, the idea, the inventor. They want to get the patent. I just got a phone call before this, and a guy's got a patent. I'm like, dude, your patent's not worth anything. It doesn't matter. I mean, if Google ties you up in court with their 700 lawyers, what's your patent worth? Like, go sell the freaking product, bro. Get in front of somebody. Get them to exchange money and time for your idea. And by the way, getting time from people is harder than getting money from them.
That's right. That's the first part of the funnel too. Can I get your time so that we can do this other thing? Um, Michael asked, and you tell me if this is a question to kind of in our framework. There's another Michael asked, what's your one thing? And I think in that sense of like, what's your mission? Do you have like a mission that's like, you know what, I'm here to do X to this world?
I mean, look, my ultimate mission is I want to help people.
Yeah.
Okay, I promised myself when I was 16 years old, I told my mom, hey, one day I'm going to grow up, one day I'm going to be rich, and one day I'm going to help people. If I ever get there, I'm going to help people, right? And you know, 40 years later, I'm helping people. So
There's, by some measures, the number of people that you help in this world is absolutely going to determine your value. I don't know if Pat Flynn said that originally or if he's quoting someone else, but I almost always think of that when I hear really successful people say what you just said, because so many of them are just focused on helping people and delivering value.
dude, if I knew now what I knew or would have known earlier, I would have gone the whole time for the goal of helping 7 billion people. If I help 7 billion people, you will be rich beyond your wildest imagination in every way that you can measure rich. And I know a lot of you listening right now, you're like, oh, money's not everything. Well, you're right, it isn't everything, okay? We're not talking about money being everything. But you're not going to do much without money. So you need some money to go along with everything else, because you're not going to be happy and broke. I don't know that guy. I've never met him. I've met a bunch of broke people. None of them seem to be very happy. So if you help 7 billion people, man, you could literally give your product to half of them. The other half will pay for it, and you'd be rich beyond your wildest dreams. And you could make a monster difference on this planet.
You got it. You said it. All right, I've got a really specific question from Jay, and this is not me. This is Jay calling in. I'm 54 and I'm starting over. What would you recommend? So I think he's identifying with your statement that at 53, you had to kind of rethink your game plan.
Yeah, dude, look, at 51 years old, I had to start over because it was 2008. I think that's right. Yeah, 2008. The bank that I owed $40 million to called the loans, and I had my other 3 businesses were seized due to the economic depression of 2007 and 8. I call it a depression because that's what it was. We're still in a recession right now. And I went to my wife and I said, baby, this is bad. This is going to be ugly. Don't spend a penny. We don't spend anything except the only thing we spend money now on is only those things that could possibly create new money. So literally, we stopped all spending on consumption. All spending now went to the creation of a new company and a new brand and a new name and getting our name out and exposure. So at 54 years old, bro, you're not too old as long as you don't spend any more time thinking about how old you are.
There you go. I have some good friends, the McKissicks, that may be on this call too, and they had a similar thing, and they've become millionaires many times over. They looked up late and said, we're behind the 8 ball. It's you always have enough time if you're willing to act in the right proportion, right?
That's right.
All right, so I've got Diane Mason. She's revisiting fear. She asked, how do you hide the fear, right? Because you said you're feeling it all the time. How do you hide that?
You know, I don't know. That's a great question. I've never been asked that. I don't try to hide anything. I'm a very transparent person. You know, people can see into my entire life, from the car I'm driving to the kids I'm with to what I'm doing all the time. I am completely transparent because I don't have anything to hide. So, you know, if I was scared, I don't know if I'd admit it to somebody that I was scared, but I might. You know, I might. I remember Danny DeVito came into my house. I was selling my house in Los Angeles, and the real estate agent, I was really excited about meeting Danny, right? And the real estate agent says, don't talk to Mr. DeVito. He doesn't like that. I'm like, yeah, okay, dude. Okay, whatever. And then and I couldn't help myself, man. If you tell me not to do something, I'm definitely going to do it, okay? So I walked up to DeVito and I said, hey, your guy over here told me not to talk to you, so I got to. And the point of that is I needed to get through it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm scared of it, it goes back to what I said earlier. Do it, man. If you're scared of it, do it. If it's going to be expansive for you, I don't mean do drugs because you're scared of them, or go get drunk because you're scared of it, or have sex with somebody because you're scared of it. If it has the potential for you to expand, to become more, to create courage, you can't have courage if there's no fear. So really, fear is an opportunity to grow your courage, because without fear, you're not being courageous.
One of the things when we wrote The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, we got to interview 120 net worth millionaires. And I remember one of the quotes that just really stood out for us is this guy just said really simply, opportunity lies on the other side of fear. And the moment you cross over, you almost always wonder, why was I so afraid of this? So I think a lot of people, by taking your advice and just kind of attacking that thing they're afraid of, if it's worth going for, they're going to find out that it wasn't so scary after all.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, got a couple more here. This has got to do with like being a business owner. When you're evaluating talent, like the people who get to work with you in your organization, what are like the top 3 things that you look for in the people that you want to surround yourself with?
Well, I'm terrible at evaluating talent. Every person I thought would make it didn't. Every person I thought couldn't make it did. I mean, it's almost like I'm backwards on it, right? So the things I do look for, though, is willingness, compliance, and whatever it takes. So a willingness, a compliance, which is basically, hey, pull my car up, and they comply to the order. Simple stuff, right? Can you just do an order without asking why?
Yeah.
And then the last thing is whatever it takes. Are you willing to do whatever it takes if it's raining outside? I mean, are you willing to serve and take care of people? I'm willing. And the last thing, the fourth thing, if I was going to add one, is persistence, man. The persistence to see it all the way through, regardless of the challenges and the obstacles. Now, that is not taught to you in school. You're not going to learn that at your last job. I have a culture, Jay, at my office. Like, if you're ever in Miami, come visit my office and see my staff. I mean, you're going to see a bunch of people that are willing, that comply, that it's like a cult at my place. People freaking love me. They'll do anything for me, and we have a blast there. People make a lot of money. People are successful, and we get rid of people a lot. So I fire people all the time.
Because if they don't meet your standards, I mean, a lot of people say slow to hire, quick to fire. Very few people, in my experience, actually exercise that. And they allow good to hang around when they can have great.
Yeah, and we make a lot of hiring mistakes, but we're willing to get rid of people, because it's not good for them. You don't want average people, and average people hate being in an environment where you're pushing for greatness all the time anyway. They're just pretending, and they're like, God, I hate that job because every day that guy's reminding me of what I'm not, what you're not now. It might be 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. And then you're like, okay, now I'm ready to do that gig.
Yep.
Because I remember there was a time in my life I was fired from my first 5 jobs. It didn't matter how much they tried to manage me or help me or educate me or how many chances. Dude, I wasn't going to be good then. It didn't matter. So I just needed to grow up, right? I needed to make some different decisions. So
that's cool. All right, I've got some big red flags on a few more questions I want to get to. There are about 7 or 8 people who asked the question, right? So when you were really broke, right? When you kind of had that ultimate rough patch, what were the first steps that you took to get out of it without that, without the money as a resource? I mean, I think the other way of saying, does it really take money to make money?
Yeah, no, it does not take money to make money. I can prove that to you. About probably 8 million people in this country can prove that to you. I can certainly prove it because I didn't have any money. My first 2 businesses were founded on no cash, no money. I was negative debt, or I had debt. It was negative $40,000 net worth. I had no self-esteem. All I had was, okay, I got to turn this around. The first thing that helped me was I was in sales at the time, so I got a guy's sales training program. I quit listening to all the people around me and said, let me go find the expert in the space, and I'm going to listen to this expert guy, the guy that did he knew the deal. I'm going to listen to him, and I'm going to do what he says. I had to borrow the money for that program, Jay. It was $3,000. That's like $7,000 today. And I borrowed the money from my mom. I was able to pay her back 30 days later, and my life changed because of my commitment to learn and duplicate someone else. I mean, frankly, that's all it did. I had to borrow the money. Now, my first company, when I was broke and I started my first company, the thing that helped me was going out, even if my eyes were bleeding, and calling on people and trying to figure out what my sales pitch, my pitch was to the public. So
get out there and lead generate, right? I mean, learn how to be the front end of your business, which is sales.
Look, and you guys that are trying to operate everything from home and be the solopreneur, I hate to tell you this, but you know, it ain't gonna work. It's just not gonna work. You have to grow. You have to grow your business. There's no money in your living room or your bedroom. The money is outside
from there, right? You're going to have to be willing to step out of that zone and grow if you want to get big, right?
Sooner or later, you got to go see somebody. There's no company that's, you know, some of these businesses might have been started in garages. Nobody found out about them because they stayed in one.
All right, that's a quotable one right there. All right, I got about 3 more questions. We're going to have to kind of go rapid fire because we're down to our last few minutes, and I want to honor that some people may have an immediate appointment after this. Where do you get your energy, or how do you manage it?
I manufacture energy the same way I do time.
All right. You invest in it?
It's not. I mean, I'd like to tell you it's because I work out and it's because I eat right and all that, but dude, I just basically create energy.
You got it.
I create at will.
Got it. It's a decision for you. I'm going to bring energy right now. It's a decision.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't matter how. I don't get confused with my emotions.
I gather that from listening to you. Hey, so there's like 5 people that are asking questions. How does somebody stay motivated? How do you keep committed? Like a lot of entrepreneurs, right? They start down a path and then they get that old squirrel syndrome, right? How do you stay committed to the course?
You know, I think writing my goals down every day really helps me a lot, you know, and making it verbal, me shouting off, bragging about what I'm going to do next.
You're putting it out in the world, man. I like that.
Yeah, so, you know, I just keep telling people, you know, I mean, my wife helps me a lot, the kids, you know, my purpose, man. I think my purpose is to help people. I think that's my purpose, and I'm going to be unhappy if I don't do that, if I deny myself. And you know, I just show up every day, man. I just try to show up every day and do the best I can. I mean, I'm not anybody special, I promise you. But I operate at levels that would make me at least give me a shot at being special. Yeah.
And I think that's showing up now. All right, I think this has actually made me laugh. I had to meet myself. Lenora asked, and I actually thought this, so you went up and talked to him, what did Danny DeVito say?
Oh, Danny just started laughing. He said, "Yeah, man." So it wasn't a big deal. It was a comment. So
that's funny. All right, last question, Coach. Do you have one? Have you had them in your past? A lot of people at your level we've experienced have had coaches or currently have them.
Yeah, I've had many coaches. I have one right now. It costs me $300,000 a year. I have another one that costs me a little less than that. They do different things for me. One looks at kind of how I'm operating. The other is a connector. So people are not spending enough. I'll just tell you this on that note. People are not investing enough money in themselves. You know, you're investing $7,000 in a car and no money in a coach. You're investing $9,000 in food products every year and no information on keeping yourself excited and motivated and focused. You are an accumulation of the thinking around you.
I love that. I mean, people educating yourself and a coach is maybe one of the highest return on investments you can make. I totally believe in that. Well, Grant, with that, I've got to end this. I want to express our gratitude. Thank you for sharing your energy, your, amazing enthusiasm for your vision and willingness to share it. So thank you so much from everybody here. I've got to do – wait, first off, let's go back. Right now on the screen, folks, 10xeverything.com. If you want to know more about Grant and what he's doing in his programs, please go there and check that out. I think he's got a lot more to offer than what we just tasted today. So, again, thank you, Grant.
Hey, thank you very much, buddy, and thank your audience, you guys that showed up today to invest your time, your energy, and your resources. That's awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Jay, and I owe you one, man.
I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to go see that culture in your office. I'm going to do that. So, folks,
Okay.
in the next 24 hours, you're going to get an email that'll have a recording of this, so you can share it with your friends, post it on Twitter, YouTube. And you can always go to our website and visit our archive. That's theonething.com/webinars. Our next webinar is going to be with Sean Stephenson. If you don't know who that is, I read his book, gosh, a year ago. It was called Sleep Smart. And he had 21 steps to sleeping better. And this is a big deal in terms of I knew that in order to be strong and have energy, I had to be better at sleeping. And a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with this. I think my wife and I implemented 19 of the 21 steps. Really smart, really focused, really actionable stuff on how you can get better rest so you can perform better in your life and at your work. Finally, again, just remember, go out there, tag us on social media. That's Jay Papasan, at Jay Papasan, at Grant Cardone. If we miss something, we'll definitely try to circle back. Thank you so much for attending. We'll see you next month. And go do your one thing, folks.